Scott, thanks for coming onto Social Dream Machine. Before we get into how you got your 100K book advance, let's talk a little bit about the launch. Like, what was that experience like as a writer, and how did it go down?
That was my first book that I wrote. And the book launch was incredible. It was like, I'm really grateful because I think people who aspire to be writers and book authors and have book deals with major publishers and stuff, it's like I couldn't imagine a more exciting book launch for my first book. It was incredible.
You said you were like in like Vegas. I saw something about like Howard Stern.
Publishing is based out of New York, of course, right? So, and the media centers were there. So the publisher brought us the guy whose true story it was that I helped him tell. They brought us to New York. They put us up for a couple of weeks, and I mean the pre-sale of the book. You know, they launched the pre-sale on Amazon, and so before the book even came out into bookstores, we were number one on Amazon in true crime, which at the time I think was like the most challenging genre to break into, and we debuted at number one.
Oh wow, that's pretty.
It was incredible, dude. They put us up in New York. We got very little sleep, and it was like being shuttled in a car from Howard Stern to CNN to E Entertainment News to CBS, all the major networks. We went to a radio studio where the way they do it is you sit in one studio in New York, and the radio stations from across the country interview you in a row. They call it following the sun across the country because you do all the morning shows, right? So we were there for 3 or 4 hours doing interview after interview after interview as the shows were going live from the East Coast to the West Coast, you know, so you start in New York, you end in California. But it was like, I mean, NBC News did a half an hour dedicated special report primetime only about our book. Howard Stern interviewed us. The day after the book came out, there were animated skits on The Tonight Show only about the book. They did them for 2 nights in a row. Saturday Night Live riffed on the book. They did a skit about it. Bill Maher riffed on the book. I mean, I had, you know, my brother lives in Guam, and he was calling me saying, dude, your book is all over the place. It's like he was in Guam. It's like we were lucky enough so that everywhere you looked, there was the book. I was walking down the street in New York outside the publicist's office, and there were literally people talking about the book passing me in the street because the New York Daily News did a 2-page spread just on the book.
It's something that obviously not everyone has the time or maybe the idea or whatever, the know-how to actually publish a book. So did that help you with like just other parts of your career moving forward? Like it was kind of like a badge of honor?
People found me because I had written that book and asked me to write their books, right? All of a sudden I was getting interview offers for anything that had to do with the subject matter. All of a sudden I became one of, for whatever reason, maybe because I put years of research into the frickin' book, right? But I became one of the voices of authority on this particular subject matter because my name's on this book, right? So I had, 30 for 30 wanted to interview me. All these big news outlets and documentaries and stuff were knocking on my door saying, hey, can we interview you? Hey, will you give us a quote? So that was like that side of it. But the other side of it was simply because it was a good looking book and it did so well. People got a hold of me to write books that had nothing to do with the subject matter. They were just like, hey, I read your book. I think you did a great job with it. I have a story about something that has absolutely nothing to do with your book, but I think you're a great writer. Will you help me out?
What was the book actually about? Like, what was like the premise of it?
The book is called Frozen, right? It's nonfiction. It's true crime. And it's the true story of a guy who went to work at the world's leading cryonics facility, and what he experienced there. And the reason it started off with so much momentum is that this company had been national news because there was a scandal involving the remains of a sports legend, Ted Williams. So it had already been in the news. And it was, it's a little micro industry that a lot of people find interesting.
Interesting.
So it was like these people who are off chopping off folks' heads and putting them in vats of liquid nitrogen.
Wow.
In order to live forever. So that is a subject matter, as you can imagine, that folks like Saturday Night Live and Dave Letterman might want to riff on a little bit.
Wow. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So we'll talk. Just one more question about the book, and then we'll move on to some other things. So on that, how did you end up doing that again? Like how? Like what's the origin story of that?
So my involvement in it is this. I've always put all of my time into creative pursuits since I was 5 years old, playing the piano, playing the guitar, typing on a typewriter before I could walk, that kind of stuff. And my parents were always really supportive, like follow your bliss, right? It's the old, and they really encouraged me to do this. It's the old, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I fashioned my life from the time I was a young kid to put my energy into being creative because that's what gave me the most joy, right? So I went through times of being a professional musician, a professional filmmaker, and I had gotten myself to the point where people were paying me to write screenplays after working in film production for years here in Los Angeles, right? And I was working with a guy who had asked me to write a screenplay for him. This guy's movies had won Academy Awards, right? And he had an idea he wanted me to write is an animated children's story about a stuffed animal that comes to life and teaches kids to believe in themselves through song, right? Kind of different from Frozen corpses, right? And so I'm writing this screenplay for the guy, and I wasn't really getting paid for it because I really wanted to work with the guy. And that's one of the things you do as a creative sometimes, if you can. You work for the credit, or you work for the back end, or you just really want to be a part of something, or really want to work with somebody. So I was literally sitting in a meeting with this guy, going over my draft of his screenplay, when he got a phone call, and that phone call was a friend of this guy, um, and the friend of the friend asked this film producer on the phone right in front of me, "Do you know anybody who can write a book?" And he says, I'm sitting right there in my home, right? He's like, "Well, I'm working with a writer right now. Hey, Scott, you want to write a book?" I haven't written a book since college, but sure, yeah, if I'll write a book, yeah. Like, what's it about? So he set up a meeting, and I went to meet with this guy whose true story it is. And he happened to be in Southern California, so I went to meet with him at a biker bar.
Hmm.
He's like, "I'll be the guy in the back with a red hat," right? Because he was literally receiving death threats at the time
Oh wow.
over the information that he released in this book.
Right.
They were literally chasing him across the country, leaving death threats for him and his wife under the windshield wipers.
Jeez.
So I didn't know it, but at the time when I first met with him, he had a Glock under the table aimed at me
Jeez.
because he thought I might be there to assassinate him.
That's terrifying.
That's how it started. And neither one of us wanted to stop this industry, or you want to freeze your body when you die. God bless, Godspeed. Go ahead, go do it. Whatever turns you on. We just wanted to show that there was some scary stuff happening, some illegal stuff happening inside this particular company. So my heart went out to him because he was like a caged animal. This guy, he was like, obviously it had a very serious effect on him. So never mind the fact it was already national news, never mind the fact it was an interesting subject matter. And I grew up reading science fiction all my life. It's just that this guy was so haunted by what was happening to him personally. I was like, I kind of want to help him.
Talk to me a little bit about your writing career. Like, how did you like? What was like some of the first times that you made money as a writer, and like, how did you even know that you could make money as a writer? Like, when was that like unlocked? Was it like a book or not a book, but like just like a one piece of writing, or like how did it all start going?
Yeah. Like I said, every job, pretty much every job I've ever had has been creative. It was like my high school and college job was fronting cover bands around crappy bars in New England. That's how I made my money. And when I graduated from college, I joined a Peace Corps type program that sent me to Kingston, Jamaica to teach high school and college writing. And I ended up pretty quickly as keyboard player for Ziggy Marley and Third World and all these great reggae acts, right? So I always did something creative. In college, I had a part-time job at one point editing a magazine, right? That might have been the first money I made as a editor, not writer. But as a writer, I got to tell you, this book might be the first time I got a check as a writer, because before that, when I came to LA 28 years ago, I started working in film production. And I guess I was making, I worked as a script supervisor, I worked in casting, I worked in development. I worked for guys who, I was rewriting screenplays for guys who had Academy Awards, but because I worked in their offices, so maybe there must have been some screenplay somewhere. Somebody paid me to write or rewrite. That was my first dollar. Um, but the bottom line is, I only followed my passions and what I love to do the most. Um, and because I would donate my time to people to work on their projects and write for them, eventually somebody somewhere paid me.
And then how did your value to money change, I guess, as far as like how did you know what to charge, or was it kind of a guessing game until you kind of got your groove?
Look, I've always been freelance, and there have been times, people have approached me to write a screenplay for them or a book. And what I'm going to ask them for, there's always three parts to it. There's three facets to the compensation. It's like, what's up front, what's the back end, and is my name on it or not, right? Credit. And those three, as one goes up, the other goes down. Um, but, you know, to figure out how much I need to charge somebody up front, you just take a look at my bank account. I might write the same exact piece of something for 5 times as much if I'm doing well that year.
Sure.
So, but what I would usually go by, Jeremy, was the Writers Guild fees. Like every year they update. If it's when it comes to the screenplay, film script side of things, it's like, if you're a union member, which I'm not, but God knows I could have been or could be. I would just look at that and be like, well, sir, if I was guild, then you would be paying me this, this, and this, and this would be the back end and stuff like that. And that would be my starting point.
Tell me about this new book that you're working on, and it's on Solana's blockchain protocol about some NFT characters. Give me a high level synopsis of what this book is about and like what you hope to accomplish on it, and anything revolving around money around it as well, if you can.
The last few years I've been ghostwriting mostly, right? And some of my closer friends are like, isn't it time you did something with your own name on it, right? And yeah, so I said, what do I care about? I care about music, I care about my family, I happen to care a lot about blockchain, and Web3. And I've, for 3 years now, I've been pretty deep into blockchain and especially spending time on Solana, and especially with NFT communities, because I'm not a DeFi guy. I've never had enough money to really invest, right? But I found myself spending a whole lot of time inside of NFT communities, and I've made enjoying the art, right? Enjoying the friendships I've made, and I've made friends. I'm closer to people who are in Dubai and Jakarta than I am across the street, because we were in the same NFT communities, and I know those guys better. We share the same passions. We invest our money into it. We love the art, right? So, and I actually launched a small NFT collection on Solana last year, and it ended up as a book, the coffee table book with a bunch of art in it, right? And I said, how can I take my love of Solana NFTs and combine it with my writing experience, right? And so I came up with the idea of a YA fantasy adventure novel starring Solana NFT characters. Kind of like if you think about Ready Player One, that's doing the same thing for crypto that Ready Player One does for video games, or like Wreck-It Ralph, where you get inside the video game and you're with the characters as they explore somebody's unique vision of what it's like to be a character inside a video game. So I did that with NFTs. So I went to these people I've been fortunate enough to meet, who are the artists and the founders and the developers on Solana, of collections and products and stuff. Like I've been fortunate enough to make friends with a lot of people who do a lot of cool stuff on the whole blockchain. And I said, here's my idea. And Jeremy, writing a book like this is a solid year of my life. Research, writing, rewriting, outlining, all that stuff. And I went to some of these guys and I said, I really want to do this. I believe, I'm not writing it for the people who are already into NFTs. I'm writing it for the people who know nothing about it and who have only ever heard through mainstream media NFTs are a scam, crypto's a scam, it's all FUD, it's all crap, right? And I'm like, nah, a lot of NFTs are scams. That's completely true, but there's great art, there's great communities. It's a way to make friends, it's a way to be part of something, right? And these Solana guys, I went to them and they said, yeah, I'll help you out. I'll invest in that. So, I mean, I sort of never heard of somebody getting investors for a novel, but I was able to take the community I'm part of on Solana NFTs, and these freaking guys they're giving me money. I incorporated. I'm building a website. I'm halfway through writing the book. So I was able to pull in enough money from these folks to pay my bills and get the thing off the ground. And also a sub DAO. I don't know if folks watching this know what DAOs are when it comes to NFTs, but they're basically just communities of people who own the NFTs and come together as sort of a democracy to make decisions, right? One of the ones I'm with gave me the entire treasury. Said, you know what, this is great. Let's do it. We want to be part of it, right? So I pulled in this money from developers and coders and collection founders and just enjoyers on Solana who want to be part of this book. And Solana Breakpoint is next month, Jeremy, in Singapore at the end of September. And the Solana blockchain has given me space on the floor of the convention, their yearly convention, to set up a booth and promote the book. And I'm printing up a copy of the first 69 pages of the book so I can spread it and promote it. I'm working with an artist on the cover. Here's a sneak peek of the cover.
Very
That's me saying, "Hey, why don't we make it look like a Marvel poster, but with Solana NFT?" That's the poor guy. That's what he's got to go off of.
You're the first person that I've ever met that made money in Web3 that was a different currency other than USD. Which was
It's crazy.
yeah.
It's crazy, and it was this thing, this little collection, right? That I mean, I paid my bill. I worked my butt off on it. I really did. It was round the clock because to promote something like an NFT collection, you got to be on Twitter and Discord non-frickin' stop, right? So I worked my ass off on it, and I was doing Twitter Spaces 5 times a week, I think, for like 2 months, right? And it debuted at #1 on Exchange Art, right? But it's because I threw so much time into it. And yeah, man, I got to tell you, there's something really crazy about making money in crypto and paying your bills with it. It's like, it's not. And it's also very weird because, as you know better than anybody, how volatile crypto markets are. My landlord doesn't take Solana. My gas company doesn't take so and then FTX happened after while I was building a second collection. It's like sometimes you feel like you're building your home on quicksand, dude, because they can just
Oh yeah.
rug you. The whole market can rug you after you put in so much time. So it's like it's fun. I get to make my living with it, but oh my god, Solana went from 150 to 8.
No, yeah, I totally get it. Let's talk a little bit about our project that we're working on as well. We're creating a community for podcasters. I'll let you kind of describe what we're building.
We're building a cohort, helping people launch their podcast. So I think we all know all the amazing reasons why you should have a podcast these days, right? When it comes to promoting yourself as a solopreneur or making yourself a more valuable employee, right? Or simply building your personal brand, right? All of that stuff are great reasons. I think everybody knows it's good to have your own podcast, but there are a lot of benefits people don't think about. Like you become better at speaking, you become better at writing, you get more comfortable in front of people, right? And you and I made the conscious decision that our niche is more or less not people who have been podcasting, but people who know they want to do it, but maybe they've been afraid to do it. Maybe they feel like they don't have the skill set.
Imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome, anxieties, like being in camera. Oh my God, how do I look? Do I look good? All that kind of, how do you edit? Where do you start? What microphone do I need? All that stuff, right? So you, with your vast experience as a podcaster and already having coached people into doing their own podcast, and me as a professional storyteller and musician who knows the gear and knows storytelling and as a documentarian and as a nonfiction writer, I've interviewed literally hundreds of people. And interviewing is sort of a great skill you need to get better at if you're going to podcast. So that's what we're doing. And I've been a teacher of grade school, high school, college. I used to teach piano, for God's sake. I love working with people and sharing what I might know that could benefit them, and seeing them learn and progress in their own life because of it. So that's like something very valuable for me.
Which is great. You're a great teacher. You're very compassionate. You're very easy to work with. Very kind. So I've definitely vouched for how empathetic of a teacher you are specifically, and I am as well. I really enjoy the process of working with people and seeing them grow and putting themselves out there. I think it really interesting thing about kind of community has been sort of a theme of this talk. You know, even like with like crypto in general, and but besides crypto, like with what we're doing, like seeing other people in the community build their podcasts and seeing how well they do,
Yeah.
people get friendly and competitive. Not that they're gonna, they just see them, the other person pushing themselves, and they're gonna be like, oh, I need to like start kicking it in high gear too. So it's like, and then other people will also create that environment where people could help each other as well.
I mean, by the time they're done with our cohort, they're going to have done their first episode and know how to finish their whole season. But besides that, like you're saying, it's like we're building a community of fledgling creators who are going to be there for each other, who are going to go like and comment and follow and help and push and compete, right? But you're right, and even after folks leave the cohort, the community stays. You're always going to be able to be a member of that and have that support. I mean, as an artist, support is it's invaluable, right? Especially for people who might be a little afraid of putting themselves out there. Because, and I've seen a big change in you, Jeremy, since you've been podcasting. You're more comfortable in social situations. I've you and I went out the other night and you were dancing on the dance floor. I couldn't freaking believe it. Right? Am I wrong? I mean, I don't know if you would have done that 2 or 3 years ago before podcasting.
Oh, 100%. I mean, and one last story about me, and then we'll get into your book thing. The remember, like I got laid off my job like three,
Dude,
4 months ago, and on a Friday, I had posted that I had been laid off, and by a Sunday, I had like a new gig that was already like didn't have a resume. It turns out that my boss, I'm working on his podcast now for a living, and on top of that, 30 hours a week or whatever. But they the whole process, like my podcast became my resume, along with LinkedIn, of course. But like,
totally.
yeah, it's crazy. So it's going to be 8 weeks. There more to come on that. So I'm excited to work on this project with you, Scott, and more to come from us as well. But
Yeah, I mean, just to sum that up for anybody who doesn't know, like you lost your job on Friday. By Monday, you had a new job, not because you applied, but because folks came to you because they knew about your podcast. They had seen your podcast. I mean, that's the best marketing we got.
yeah, it's crazy. And every time you interview someone too, you end up just opening doors of other
Yeah,
people as well.
and you learn,
Yeah.
right? And you help other people by sharing it.
Yeah, and for the next like 6 or 7 minutes, let's get into this book, this 100K book deal.
Yeah,
I know we've been like we teased it at the beginning, so let's give the people what they want. How did that happen?
what writer doesn't want a six-figure advance from a major publisher, for God's sake, right? So, and again, I got the job because I had done work for free. I got the job because the film producer thought I was a good guy and suggested me because he thought I was a nice guy. And then the guy whose true story it was thought I was a good-hearted guy, right? And I'd never really published a book before. So I went and worked my little butt off writing, interviewing. I interviewed that guy for over 100 hours. I wrote. And then, the normal path you want as a writer is you get yourself a manager or an agent. They help you craft a book proposal, and they take that to publishers. So I was fortunate enough to get an amazing manager, Charlene Martin Literary Management, experienced, kind, dedicated, and she just knows what the heck she's doing. And she never gave up on us. We because the subject matter and because of how litigious some of the people involved in this book are, they've sued people into oblivion before. It's true. There were publishers who just wouldn't touch it. We had a small publisher who came on board. They got cease and desist letters. They ran away. Right. We went through all these publishers, and then my manager said, "It only takes one. You can get 99 rejection letters, but it just takes one to say yes." Right. So she went back. We went all the way around and came back to some of the first people we had submitted to, And I think somebody might have changed inside the organization. You just never know. But we ended up, so we got a 6-figure advance from Harper Collins. That's Rupert Murdoch. That's like, how can you do better, right? At the time, it was like major publishers, they put you into bookstores and they promote your book, right? We got that advance. I'm working with an editor. The editor takes my manuscript, sends it back to me with like 3 words circled that he thought were misspelled. That was the extent of his editing. I was like, man, I thought I might need more help than this. Anyway, it turns out that the imprint we were with at Harper Collins, Rupert Murdoch disbanded it. It's a long story, right? But all of a sudden, boom, it's gone. They give us the book back. We keep the advance, but they give us the book back. So we go back around, and we ended up at another major publisher, the Perseus Books Group and the Vanguard Press imprint, where the guy there, the publisher, was a legend, a First Amendment legend. He published books nobody else dared to because they were the truth, right? So now we've got the support of that guy, and they go and they hire us a publicist from HarperCollins, pay the guy, I think, 6 figures, right? Because with that sort of book launch, you need months and months in advance to launch it. They have to book E-Entertainment, they have to book NBC, they have to book Howard Stern. They do these things months out, right? So we had the full support of them. And I guess to sum up how we got that advance, it was the tenaciousness of our manager, never giving up, knowing that it only takes one, remaining the good guys and not changing stuff, right? And just believing in it and not giving up on it, And the manager, is the one who made the deal, and we got our 6-figure advance.
It's interesting too that you say that. It's such a good mind reframe, because I think that even as a creator, everyone wants like a million views and thousands of YouTube views, but to your publisher's point, it really only takes one, which is like pretty a good thing to take away from a lot of things. Targeted is much more important than, or just getting the yes from one person, or that makes a lot of sense.
That's a really great way to put it, Jeremy, because if you think about all the thousands of hours that I put into the book proposal, right? Writing even stupid stuff like my resume, or what pictures do we put in all of that stuff ended up only having to connect with one person who made a decision at a publishing company, who was one out of dozens and dozens and dozens. So that's an interesting point. You do all that stuff so that you can get one person to say yes.
And the interesting thing is, it sounded like the people that said no initially didn't say no the second time for whatever reason. I don't know if it was like a different staff change or something like that, but that's also interesting because some people will give up on rejection and just like, oh, they said no once, so I'm done.
You never know. I got friends here in LA, and I'm a musician, and they get signed to these, or got signed to these huge record labels. They went to the label, 1 month, they got denied. They went back to them 3 months later. It's a whole new staff. And they said yes. I've seen it happen with friends of mine. So you just don't give up. You keep trying. And you know that you just got to connect with that one person. That one person might move from company to company, or job to job, or career to career. You never know. You just keep going.
How did you deal with like rejection during that time? Because it seems like it would have been for like a year, all these like rejections, and then you're putting in a lot of work. How did you stay motivated and deal with your rejection?
There comes a point when you put just so many hours into something, you're not going to give up on it, right? And the second one is, I spend a lot of time working on stuff myself. Like, writing a book is a lonely business. But if you have a partner, if you have a manager, it makes it a lot easier. A community, geez, right? even if it's 1 or 2 people big, right? It keeps you going.
I'm excited for our launch. More to come on that. I don't want to put out the site yet because we don't have it up yet. But where do people find you, Scott, if they want to reach out to you?
You can find me on LinkedIn with my name, right? If you want to learn more about this Solana book, this NFT book that I'm writing, I'm going to actually grab the URL and start building the website today in preparation for the Singapore convention. And that's going to be greaterfools.io. Don't do it yet. Let me buy the URL. Nobody go buy it.
Well, thanks for your time, Scott.
Hey, man. Thanks, Jeremy.